8:45 this morning, Aaron Hernandez, arrested by police, led away from his North Attleboro, Massachusetts home in handcuffs, taken by police cruiser for processing. 90 minutes later, the New England Patriots cut him from their roster. This afternoon, still wearing his white T-shirt and gym shorts, Hernandez arraigned on a charge of first-degree murder. SportsCenter covering the story from all angles. Jeremy Schaap en route from the courtroom to the jailhouse. Michelle Steele at Hernandez' home where the day's events began. Mike Reese from Patriots headquarters, Gillette Stadium. And Roger Kosek, our legal analyst, here to walk us through the judicial process that is taking place. And we welcome you to SportsCenter, teamed with Lindsay Zarniak. I'm John Anderson. The New England Patriots released Aaron Hernandez today. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts did not. Held without bail, charged with the murder of Odin Lloyd.
We just showed you what happened when police arrived at his home this morning. Hernandez led from his house in North Attleboro and into a police car in handcuffs. And the next time that we saw Aaron Hernandez, he was arriving for his arraignment, getting out of that police car, entering the Attleboro District Courthouse. That was around 2 o'clock, and it was roughly 45 minutes later that he entered the courtroom where he was formally arraigned. Assistant District Attorney William McCauley formally presented the charges against Hernandez.
Someone versus Aaron Hernandez. Sir, on docket 1334-2057, alleged by the North Attleboro Police. Count 1 and count 2, date of offense June 17, 2013. Count 1 is murder. Count 2, carrying without a license, carrying a firearm without a license. Count 3, possession of a large capacity firearm. Count 4, possession of a large capacity firearm. Count 5, possession of a firearm without an FID card. And count 6, possession of a firearm without an FID card. Date of offense on the last 4 complaints, June 22nd, 2013.
So Hernandez being charged with the first-degree murder of 27-year-old Odin Lloyd, along with 5 gun-related charges, which include carrying a firearm without a license, possession of a large capacity firearm, possession of a firearm without a firearm owner's identification card, and 2 additional firearm charges. We now welcome in legal analyst Roger Kosek. And Roger, during this day we have heard from the district attorney. What is your initial assessment of the evidence they laid out against Hernandez in court today?
Well, you know, Lindsay, it's circumstantial evidence mostly. They haven't told us whether or not they have a witness, and they certainly haven't told us whether or not they found the murder weapon. And those are the kinds of things that juries usually like to see. But the circumstantial evidence that the prosecutor laid out today sounded very convincing. They say they can place Hernandez in the company of the victim shortly before the murder occurred. They are able to trace movements. They sound like they have a witness because they said they have someone who can say what was actually said within the car that when they were traveling together. That sounds like a witness. So the evidence that the prosecution put forward, like I say, mostly is circumstantial, but it was convincing.
Roger, because they've charged him with first-degree murder, is that because they believe he pulled the trigger?
Well, he either pulled the trigger or he was present and part of the group that killed the trigger. The law is pretty clear. You don't have to be the actual trigger puller to be convicted of murder in the first-degree murder. If you do something that furthered the act, if you're the driver of the car that took someone away knowing they were going to be murdered, you're just as guilty.
As far as we know, so there's no murder weapon, there is no witness up to this point. How does that impact this investigation?
Well, we heard at the end, we heard the prosecutor, when he made his brief statement in front of the courthouse, ask any citizens if they had anything or knew anything about this case to call them. One of the things a prosecutor dearly loves is to have the murder weapon to show the jury or to have a witness who can step forward and say, yeah, I was there and this is what happened. Now, they made hints like they may have a witness, but we don't know who that person is. And obviously, if it was someone who was involved in the murder, that person's testimony becomes somewhat suspect. So, you know, it all impacts in some way, but you can see what the problem is with just circumstantial evidence. But I think that the prosecution will and must be able to improve their case.
Well, we know that there's no death penalty in the state of Massachusetts, and we know life without parole is the maximum sentence. But what does Hernandez face if convicted not of murder, but of one or of all of the lesser gun-related charges?
Well, the gun-related charges are really not I mean, they're serious charges, but it's almost in a sense when you're charged with first-degree murder, it's like being charged with double parking. They're serious crimes, you know, gun-related charges are bad crimes, but really what he's facing is first-degree murder. If he gets convicted of that, he goes away for the rest of his life.
And because this is such a high-profile case, if you were the defense, would you consider asking for a change of venue if this case goes to trial?
You know, I think he's in the right place. He's a football star in a area that is crazy for the New England Patriots. I think if anybody's going to look at him and maybe give him not necessarily the benefit of the doubt, but give him a fair trial, I think the area of that area of Attleboro, and I think the people of the state of Massachusetts will do it.
Roger, what is next for the trial?
Well, what the next thing that's going to happen is that the grand jury, the Attleboro grand jury, will meet, and within the next, I say, week to 10 days, and I think they will return an indictment. That's what grand juries do. And once they return an indictment, that will then be transmitted back to the court. The court will call the lawyers in for a meeting. Dates will be set for motions, the kinds of things lawyers do, and eventually there'll be a trial. And assuming there's not a plea in this case, eventually there'll be a trial date set, and that I think that trial date will be sometime early next year.
Roger Cossack with the latest on Aaron Hernandez.
Jeremy Schaap next to join us on SportsCenter tonight. He is on the phone and en route to the Bristol County House of Correction and Jail. Jeremy, you were in the courtroom for the arraignment when the charges were read. Let us start there. The case the DA made against Hernandez.
Well, we heard what Roger was saying. The DA presented a very cohesive timeline of the events of the night of June 16th, the early morning of June 17th, pieced together through cell phone tower logs, through text messages, through surveillance video, not only at Aaron Hernandez's home, but also at various places in the Boston and North Attleboro areas. There was so much granular detail in the evidence that it seemed to be very compelling. Of course, the defense had a different take on it, but the amount of detail about conversations that Aaron Hernandez allegedly had with people who were presumably accomplices, somehow witnesses to what happened that evening, those could only have come from those people themselves, unless there was some kind of audio as well on the surveillance system, which is unlikely in Hernandez's home. There were also people who heard gunshots at the industrial park at approximately the time of death that has been calculated for Odin Lloyd. We were expecting broad strokes at the arraignment, and instead we've got a lot of very specific details that, in the prosecutor's words, put Aaron Hernandez in the right place, in the right frame of mind, with a weapon, and implicated, of course, in the death of Odin Lloyd.
So that is the prosecution's point of view, Jeremy. If you will hold for a moment here, let's listen to Hernandez's attorney, Michael Fee, counter in defense of his client.
We want this defendant evaluated on the merits as any other defendant would be before this court. First, on the strength of the case, Your Honor. We just heard Mr. McCauley describe the case. It is, at bottom, a circumstantial case. It is not a strong case. If the court separates fact from the inferences and arguments that Mr. McCauley previewed for us that were not based on fact, you'll see that it is circumstantial, not strong. This defendant stands before the court without any record whatsoever.
Jeremy, Michael Fee also argued to get his client bail. Why did the judge deny that request?
Well, most simply, of course, John, because of the severity of the charges. As we know, if he's convicted, there's no death penalty in the state of Massachusetts, but if he's convicted on the first-degree murder charge, he goes to jail for the rest of his life, no possibility of parole. Obviously, that makes him a flight risk.
The family of the victim, Odin Lloyd, in the courtroom. How much do we know about him and them?
What we know about Odin Lloyd, and this has mostly been gleaned from reports in the local media, he's 27. We know that. He played semi-professional football for the Boston Bandits for the last 6 years as a linebacker. It seems that he was dating Aaron Hernandez's fiance's sister for some time. We don't know exactly how long. It does not seem that he has, any kind of a past that would suggest that he gets mixed up in any kind of trouble. His family has roots in Antigua. There are reports that he was born in the U.S. Virgin Islands in St. Croix, but he did grow up and attend high school in Boston.
Before we let you go, if you could just sort of characterize and sum up the scene in and around the courtroom this afternoon.
Well, it was a feeding frenzy, as you would expect in a situation like this. A famous professional football player charged in a heinous crime. There was so much speculation over the course of the last 9 days about exactly what had happened, what prosecutors were waiting for. Now we see that they were accumulating so much evidence against him. There was a lot of drama, a lot of human drama. Odin Lloyd's mother had to be taken from the courtroom after prosecutors described the ways that they allege Aaron Hernandez murdered her son. It was a stunning scene.
Jeremy Schaap headed to the building where Aaron Hernandez will be spending his first night in jail while waiting his next court appearance on a charge of first-degree murder. Thank you, Jeremy. This all started on Monday of last week when the body of Odin Lloyd was found about a mile from Hernandez's home in North Attleboro, Mass. Police then searched his home the next day, seen carrying out several boxes. Thursday, police learned that Hernandez's cell phone and home security system were intentionally destroyed, turned over his cell phone in pieces. Friday, reportedly an arrest warrant was being prepared, was not served at that point or through the weekend. Police continued to search his home on Saturday. There they removed about 15 bags of evidence before moving on Monday to search a nearby pond. Then, of course, early this morning, Hernandez arrested, released by the Patriots, and now charged and facing first-degree murder.